Hello everyone, this is part 47 of What If Naruto and Hinata trained together and a spark happened, and I hope you guys enjoy this video and to like, to subscribe, to share, and check out the playlist, to see more comment down below. Now let's start the intro.
They call me a god. They call me a god. They call me a god.
Join my membership, the perks are great. It's in the description. Your Majesty, the Hokage bowed deeply as she entered the throne room. Tsunade, the daimyo, kept his voice diplomatically neutral, but there was a strain around his eyes. I have been expecting you, although, to be honest, I had thought you would seek an audience with me far sooner. I believe you wish to discuss my instructions regarding the Land of Lightning and its shinobi. I regret delivering such an important directive in such a short note. You must be confused, and possibly put out. Not at all, Tsunade deflected. I am sure there is some manner of political purpose behind your orders that we leave the Cloud Ninjas alone. I know you must always keep the best interests of our nation in mind. A hint of red touched Hisoka's ears, and his eyes narrowed slightly. But he smiled and nodded, before indicating that his retainers should bring the shinobi leader a chair. In that case, to what do I owe the honor of this visit? He asked, seemingly openly. Tsunade tapped her foot impatiently. She had broken through the floor under her desk before with her impatient habit, and though she could not stop herself, she found that focusing on keeping her massive strength in check was almost as distracting as the reprieve action itself. Besides, she was in no mood for another lecture from Shizune on the cost of replacing furniture and flooring. Though depending on what the kunoichi she was waiting for had to say, the Hokage expected she might end up beyond caring about a few oak planks. The leader of the Konohagakure Corps had returned from her meeting with the Conclave of Shadows in a measured rage. She had marched back to the room where the clan leaders were still meeting, and informed them that they would be taking no further action regarding the Land of Grass or Land of Waterfalls. She had ignored their barrage of questions, and dismissed everyone except Inoki Yamanaka, Shikaku Nara, and Hiashi Hyuga. After swearing them to secrecy, she had informed them about the new Raikage and the Fire Daimyo's orders. After regaining control of the room, she ordered the three clan leaders to begin investigating the daimyo, and the capital in general. She asked them to try to find a link between Hisoka Honokata and Guki Namikaze, and to determine if either group of the new Raikage's servants had infiltrated the Land of Fire. Leaving them, Tsunade met with the second in command of the ANBU, and dispatched the four most invisible members of the Black Ops to check on another matter. The three clan leaders met with her again 2 days later, but they did not have anything concrete. The leader of the Land of Fire had not been replaced, nor were there any Shizokus or hidden cloud ninjas in the capital. And there was nothing unusual in the daimyo's finances. But there were other rumors, whispers that alone meant little, but combined to give Tsunade a sneaking suspicion. Thus she had dispatched the jonin for whom she now waited anxiously. The Hokage had been phoned as soon as the agent re-entered the Leaf Village, and she ordered her assistant to send the kunoichi straight into the Sannin's office, as soon as the younger woman arrived. Tenten entered the Hokage's office only minutes after she passed through the Konoha's main gate. The weapons expert still wore civilian clothing, not having bothered to change before beginning her return to the hidden Leaf Village. And the Hokage demanded without greeting, as soon as the younger woman closed the door. Tenten took a shallow breath, both her muscles and chakra exhausted from her run. It's as you suspected, Tenten confirmed. Nyoko has not been to school in 8 days. The official story is that she has a mild yet lingering cold, and that it is highly infectious. Supposedly she is in her suite, recovering, and only select maids and guards are allowed in to see her. Except that she isn't, all of her rooms are empty. And I watched her maid bring in a bowl of soup, sit down in the entryway, eat it, and then take the empty bowl back. So she is gone, and the daimyo is trying very hard to conceal the fact, Tsunade muttered angrily. She turned her chair around, and glared out her window in the direction of the capital of the Land of Fire. Lady Tsunade, there's something more going on here, isn't there? Tenten asked, and the Hokage turned her wrathful look on the other jonin. Tenten paused nervously, and then forced herself to continue. I mean, there has to be some reason the daimyo doesn't have us scouring the continent, looking for the princess, right? I don't know, the Sannin admitted, her voice more mellow than her expression, but I definitely need to have a talk with Hisoka-sama. I have heard through the rumor mill that Nyoko Haim has taken ill, and that her recovery has been remarkably slow. So I thought I would offer my services. I'm sure I can find a medical jutsu to get the princess back on her feet. The daimyo winced, and Tsunade found herself wishing she could talk him into playing poker. She kept her face neutral, while he sighed to cover his mistake. That is very kind of you, Hisoka said expansively, but it is only a mild cold. I'm sure my daughter just needs some more rest. I'm not so sure about that, Your Majesty, the Hokage countered as diplomatically as she could, for the illness to linger for this long, and remain so dangerously communicative. I'm not sure what your civilian doctors have told you, but to me this sounds like the incubation period of a more dangerous disease. And even if it is just a tenacious cold, if it gets out, it could become a minor epidemic. Don't you think it is better for me to find out what it will take to cure this now, either to nip it in the bud, or to be prepared for when it does start to spread? Hisoka Honokata closed his eyes and took a deep breath. He knew it was dangerous to look the last of the Sannin in the eye while trying to come up with a lie. But he could tell she was suspicious, and could not think of anything that would convince the Kani Kunoiki. When he looked at her again, he saw she was regarding him sadly. Shall we dispense with these games, Your Majesty? Tsunade asked mildly. He regarded her carefully for a moment, and then nodded. Clear and seal the court, he instructed loudly, I will speak with the Hokage in private. But Your Majesty, his lead bodyguard protested, we cannot leave you alone. Tsunade-san, the daimyo did not bother to argue with his samurai. If I asked you, how long would it take you to incapacitate my guards and toss them outside? Assuming you didn't want them seriously injured. She prompted, and the Land of Fire's ruler waved his hand in agreement. She looked around at the 20, thickly muscled, well-armed, and heavily armored men. Then she shot the ranking warrior a smug grin. 30 seconds, she answered, 40, tops. A few of the men blanched, and the daimyo sighed angrily. If I have to give another order on this matter, the royal informed his protectors sternly, it will not be to any of you. The lead soldier nodded tersely, and moments later the Hokage and the daimyo were alone. The reinforced doors slammed shut. Tsunade's expression softened, and the leader of the Fire Country dropped his mask, transforming from powerful ruler to frightened father before her eyes. What is going on, Hisoka-sama? The Sannin switched to a slightly more familiar form address, her voice showing her concern. Where is your daughter? I don't know, he shook his head, I don't know where he took her. Guki Namikaze, she prompted, and he nodded. How do you know it was him? Tsunade asked carefully. He sent me her school bag, and a video of her in a room somewhere, the daimyo answered hoarsely. Alright, let's start from the beginning. The Sannin's tone became more analytical. When did Nyoko Haim go missing? 11 days ago, the Friday before last, the royal explained. On her way home from school, someone disabled Nyoko's shadows and took her. We did not notice right away, because she had arranged to doing some shopping first. But before she was supposed to return home, we received a special delivery. As I said, Nyoko's bag and a video. The video showed her, unharmed, and then shifted to Guki. He told me my daughter was insurance against the Land of Fire's interference with his new position as the Raikage. He swore a blood oath to me, that Nyoko would be treated well, and not harmed or molested, in any way, so long as my soldiers and ninjas remained neutral. And he promised if he ever planned any hostile actions against us, that he would return Nyoko at least 3 months before the attack. When her guards returned, he frowned. I scolded them for losing sight of her, and told them she had taken ill. I'm not sure they believed me, but it would have meant contradicting me and admitting their mistake to you, so they said nothing. Blood oaths can be faked, Tsunade informed him, especially on video like that. But unless Guki has changed more than it seemed from our recent meeting, we can probably trust his word. Hisako nodded, soothed by her words. His reaction grated on the medic, and she was not able to fully rein in her infamous temper. And none of that explains why you didn't tell me. She barked. So you could put her at risk. The daimyo shot back. He was already able to take her out of my city, without anyone noticing. And I did order an investigation, but there were no clues, no witnesses, no indications that the crown princess had been taken in broad daylight, with 4 Anbu members secretly guarding her. Her guards were disabled without serious injury, and without ever seeing their attacker. If I had gone to you, He would have known. And if you try to rescue her, who knows what he will do to her. Guki won't do anything, she shook her head, he'll leave it to one of his flunkies. And I think you have underestimated the leaf ninjas and overestimated my former student. But I guess we will find out. What are you saying? He demanded, an edge of hysteria in his voice. We are going to find and rescue Nyokoheim, of course, the kunoichi said firmly. No, he said darkly. You would rather leave her in the hands of her kidnapper. Tsunade questioned incredulously, a traitor to your own country, and the enemy of the whole world. That is something of an exaggeration, the daimyo objected dubious. With all due respect, your majesty, bullshit, Tsunade snorted, Guki has his own private army, if a small one. He took control of the hidden cloud village, and has conquered 2 countries bordering the land of fire. The reason he made that promise, and told you to restrict me from interfering, is because he intends to go after more nations, probably including some of our allies. And it is only a matter of time before he comes after us. All the more reason to let him keep Nyoko, he asserted uncertainly, he promised to return her long before he attacks the land of fire. We can use that to know when we need to prepare for his attack. You would have us break our word, deny aid to our allies, and wait until he has us surrounded and alone. Tsunade prompted incredulously. The daimyo broke under the strain of her words. She knew him to be a highly moral man, whose personal beliefs sometimes clashed with the demands of ruling. She's my daughter, my only child, Hisako croaked, I can't see any other way to keep both her and my country safe. Tsunade stood slowly, torn between her desire to reassure the daimyo and to storm out in anger. She settled for bowing stiffly. Then I will take my leave, your majesty. Without waiting for him to acknowledge her, she turned and strode evenly towards the large double doors. Tsunade, his voice caught up with her before she could escape. I order you not to search for Nyoko, he instructed her with all the strength he could muster, when she turned back to look at him, you or any other ninja. She stared at him for a moment, and then nodded slightly. Promise me, he demanded desperately. Her eyes flashed in rage, and she tore open the left side of her blouse, revealing most of her left B. She sliced her fingertip open with her nails, and then smeared the kanji for honor over her heart, messy in her angry haste. I swear I will not dispatch any leaf shinobi either by order or by request, myself included, to find or rescue Princess Nyoko Honokata, on pain of death. The blood vanished into her skin, and she pulled her shirt closed. Satisfied, she prompted darkly. He dipped his head in regretful acceptance. In that case, I have other duties to see to. This time Tsunade did not mask her annoyance as she stomped out, slamming open the heavy doors like they were made of bamboo instead of silver and steel-laden oak. But once she was past the guards, a smirk played across her lips, and the Hokage was already plotting as she exited the palace and met up with her assistant. You wanted to see me, Lady Tsunade, Temari said formally, as the Sannin darted past her into the office. The Konoha's resident Sand-Jonin had been surprised by the official request that she be waiting to meet with the Hokage, the moment the leader of the Hidden Leaf returned to the village. Temari had heard from her brother of the events in the Conclave of Shadows gathering, and was certain this summons was related. Inside, Tsunade ordered, adding, we need absolute privacy. Though exhausted from her run, the medic pulled her guest quickly inside, rather than simply sitting and letting Temari enter on her own. The leaf medic activated the chakra seals and other devices that shielded the room. The original Fuinjutsu had created in tandem by the first 5 cages, as an extension of the guards and wards in the meeting chamber. In addition, each individual Hokage had added their own protections, most recently Tsunade's installation of bleeding edge signal jammers and white noise generators. Inside her office, the last Sannin was reasonably assured that even the gods could not hear or see what was being discussed. Unless they were in the crawl space over the false ceiling a young Naruto had liked to frequent. I assume Gaara told you about what happened at the Conclave meeting 6 days ago, Tsunade started directly. That Guki Namikaze, an X-class renegade from the Hidden Leaf is now the Raikage, and your daimyo ordered you not to take any action against him. Temari noted grimly. That's the gist of it, the Hokage agreed as she lowered herself into her chair, moaning softly, I'm getting too old for all day, cross-country marathons. Temari waited anxiously for the grumpy leaf leader to get settled in. I just returned from the capital, Tsunade explained, and the daimyo and I had an, well, let's just say interesting discussion about the reason for his orders. The Sanon's brown eyes locked on the younger blonde's blue-green orbs, and the flippancy left her voice. Guki has kidnapped Nyoko Honokata, and is using her to force the Land of Fire's neutrality in current events. Given the events around his daughter's abduction, as well as promises Guki offered, His Majesty is complying with the traitor's demands. Temari digested that for a moment, and when Tsunade did not speak, the Sand Kunoichi offered a thought of her own. The Land of Earth Daimyo has a young son. Do you think that Namikaze could have taken him as well, and that is why the Tsuchikage voted with the Reikage? The elder woman pursed her lips in thought, and then nodded appreciatively. I hadn't considered that, but you could very well be right. So why did you ask me here, Lady Tsunade? Temari pressed anxiously. The Daimyo ordered me not to send any leaf ninjas to search for the princess, and in a fit of rage, I made a blood oath to that effect. The Sanon looked mildly embarrassed as she admitted that, and the Sand Ninja could not suppress a slight grin. Well, I have ways around that, starting with investigating the leader of the Kasage Corps. Tsunade shrugged away her error and continued, the grass is still technically independent from the cloud, and I started the investigation before I made that oath. Besides, what kind of arrogant ass actually changes his name to leader? But that's not enough, is it? The sharp young woman intuited, and her host nodded. No, that's why I asked you here. Hisoka-sama probably didn't think of this, or thought I was too proud or too stubborn to ask for help. But to make it clear, I'm not asking for help, Tsunade insisted gruffly. I want to hire the Hidden Sand Village to find Nyoko Honokata. But just to find her. If your people try to rescue her, and fail, it could lead to an international incident. Discover where she is first, and then we can decide what to do. Temari nodded. I will speak to Gaara immediately. I will contact him as well, once I hammer out the specifics of the mission request. The Sanon agreed, but I was hoping you could get the ball rolling before that. Of course, Temari was pleased that her ally trusted her that much. Is there anything else I can do? Yes. Tsunade frowned melodramatically. Whatever you do, do not tell anyone else about this. Especially not your boyfriend, who would be sure to go right to Ino or Naruto. I don't want anyone else finding out about this. Tsunade's overemphasis made her true intentions blatantly obvious. I'll do my best, Temari said, sounding hypercritically dubious of herself, but Shikamaru is smart and can be pretty observant. I'm not sure I'll be able to keep it from him. Just do your best. The Hokage smirked at their mutual, overacted, understanding. Then she sobered, her smile turning more sincere. Thank you, Temari. Having you here, living in our village, has been a real blessing. I know my brother feels the same about Kurenai, the younger Jonan said dismissively, but she could not hide a slight coloring of her cheeks. I'll call him as soon as you let me out of here. Tsunade dropped the barriers around the room, and Temari did not bother to offer a parting before she darted out the door, already drawing her phone. Tsunade prepared to make some calls of her own. Now, to find out more about this, leader, she muttered distractedly. The couple pushed their cart through the crowded streets of the hidden grass village, wearing matched expressions of nervousness. The husband was slightly overweight with crew cut, thinning brown hair, and large eyes whose orange irises looked too small for the rest of his orbs. His wife was about an inch taller, rail-thin, with her pale lavender hair pulled into a ponytail, bound at 3 points down its length. Her face was severely pinched, giving the impression her cheeks might have shattered if she smiled too widely. They were not unfamiliar with the Kasage Corps, but had never seen so many people in its streets, especially not ninjas wearing full stealth gear. Hey, Dango seller, what do you think you're doing? A shrill voice challenged them, and the vendor turned to look at whoever had stopped them, his anxious expression struggling not to break into a full panic. But when he saw the one-eyed face of the grass Jonan Ko, he breathed a sigh of relief. You're a week late, she growled affectionately. If I had to go much longer without your treats, I was going to hurt someone. Or at least send my squad out to look for you. My apologies, Mistress Ko, the merchant bowed his head. With everything that has been happening, it was harder to acquire ingredients, as well as to get here unmolested. Yeah, I guess, she agreed, her voice hinting at annoyance. Then her eye narrowed as she studied him. You worried about something? It's just, he lowered his voice conspiratorially, there are so many people here. And these mercenaries have a, shall we say, less than positive, reputation. I have never felt unsafe in the hidden grass village before, but they keep staring at us, and I can't see their faces, so I don't know if they are hungry, or they are planning to rob and kill us. I don't think you have to worry about that, she said, but the kunoichi could not quite make her voice as reassuring as she intended, but just in case, you should keep to Market Street, and make sure you're in back at the inn before dark. Thank you, mistress, the salesman nodded. Now then, on to business, the Jonin licked her lips in anticipation. The usual then. He brightened, and his wife began preparing the spherical pastries. No, I don't think 2 trays is going to be enough, Ko counted hungrily, better make it 3. The seller nodded, and his partner served up the small plates in rapid succession, each bearing 3 skewers of 3 dango in assorted flavors, some savory but most sweet. The kunoichi had already finished the first set before the second was done, but she savored the second tray, and still had 1 skewer left by the time she was past her third helping. Delicious as always, the grass shinobi complimented the silent chef, and then paid the woman's husband for her snack. I'll be looking for you again tomorrow, Ko warned them. How long will you be in town this time? Probably a week, the merchant answered, and his wife frowned at him and indicated the cart with a tilt of her head, so he added, maybe less if everyone buys as much as you do. Maybe I better scare your other customers away, Ko stated possessively, and the couple both shared looks of dismay, so she laughed at him, noting, I'm kidding. Well, mostly. See you later. She vanished into the crowd, and the merchant surreptitiously removed the note tucked into the bills. He handed it to his wife with a frown. Are you sure about this? He asked, mixing whispers and hidden leaf sign language. We have just sacrificed this cover, and if Ko is not really an agent of the loyalists, we will be walking into a trap. Lady Ayameko trusts her, and the Hokage trusted Ayameko in this matter, the female Anbu agent answered in kind, and frankly, I was getting sick of making dango. She memorized the codes and seals on the note, and then subtly slid it into the cart's burner. The fake food sellers continued their route through the Kasagakure, servicing customers and observing the distribution of the Shizokus and the grass ninjas. After the sun had vanished behind the tree line, but before the blush of twilight had faded, the merchant couple checked into the only boarding house in the Kusagakure, and locked themselves securely in their rooms. They allowed the disguised jutsus to lapse, revealing a pair slightly younger, much more physically fit, and moderately more attractive than their aliases. She touched her husband's face gently, and then they got to work, abandoning the civilian garb and dressing in the high-quality stealth suits that were hidden in their luggage. Finally they retrieved their masks from the last, most thoroughly concealed pockets in their bags. She slipped the reinforced, stylized, porcelain hawk's face over her own, while her mate hid his visage behind that of a wolf. Garbed for their mission, the leaf ninjas quickly double-checked their equipment. Each carried no weapon, but for a single stealth kunai. Like the ninja blades, most of the gear was made from wood or ceramics, but reinforced with chakra as much as possible without potentially attracting the attention of the various key-sensing Kekkei Genkai. And unlike the multi-purpose daggers, the rest of their tools were strictly for infiltration. Each carried standard equipment, 50 meters of high-test cable, a grappling hook, a few small mirrors, a plastic misting bottle filled with distilled water, a few wooden shims, a small hammer, assorted screwdrivers, and similar accoutrements. But Hawk also carried a dozen blank chakra tags with extra ink and pens, while her wolf had a more elaborate set of lockpicks and a USB flash drive in a special case designed to shield it from metal detectors and other magnetic fields. As certain as they could be of their preparations, the 2 shinobi slipped silently out the window. The last glimmers of natural light were gone, and had been replaced by the glaring aura of the street lamps. The growth of the hidden grass village was such that while most of the lights were electric, some of the gas torches had yet to be replaced. Also with the nightfall, all sense of welcome had vanished the Kasagakure. Any upstanding citizens and ninjas had retreated to their homes, leaving the street in the hands of the mercenaries and the village's seedier residents. As the Konoha agents darted from shadow to shadow, they could not help but reflect that the excuse they had offered eavesdroppers was indeed true. The city felt darker, more dangerous, than it had in any of their previous yearly visits. Their eyes met, even through the shaded glass of their masks. Hawk and Wolf had been together long enough, both personally and professionally, that each generally knew the other's thoughts without the need to speak. Sensing their shared reminiscence, and the worry that accompanied it, both spies nodded in unison, as if to banish the other's musings. Their focus returned to the task at hand. They increased their speed, heading for the command center for the hidden grass ninjas, which also served as the home of the man who called himself leader. The building was mostly dark when they arrived. As the primary operations post for the grass ninjas, there were naturally parts of the manor that were always active. But their intelligence stated that, just over 1 year ago, leader had started retiring early in the evening. Using information gleaned from selling dango near the base, as well as the data KO had slipped them, they were able to enter the structure undetected. Avoiding the motion sensors and cameras was child's play for the two Tokujo, and thanks to their informant, Hawk was able to fool the Fuinjutsu designed to detect authentic grass headbands on any person who crossed its threshold. Inside, they moved in hurried silence to the office of the traitor. But as they reached the hallway that led to the goal, they slowed greatly. The office and bed chamber of their target were both part of the same suite, and according to their sources, he had inordinately sharp hearing, such that it bordered on being a bloodline trait. Wolf picked the lock on the door, wordlessly cursing each inaudible tap of ceramic on metal. However, the barrier opened without alarm, and the couple slipped inside. The first room was the office, and was unsurprisingly empty. Both shinobi darted over to the desk, and Wolf disconnected the computer's speakers, while Hawk placed a jutsu tag on it to neutralize the noise of the drives and fans. Then the male Anbu agent booted up the system, while his wife moved to the cabinet. Officially they were there to find out what, if anything, leader had planned once he cemented his control over the land of grass. But neither ninja was new to the game, and they had both had heard rumors, so they knew their other, unspoken, objective was to try to find the location of the missing fire princess. Wolf was mildly surprised by how long it took him to hack the Kusa leader's password, and by the time he started cloning the hard disk to his portable drive, Hawk had already finished rifling through the paper files, taking pictures of everything she thought was relevant. She noticed a small closet, not truly hidden but subtly blended into the wall. The kunoiki's instincts told her that there was something important stored in the seemingly unimportant recess, and after doing all she could to verify there were no traps or alarms, she slid her fingers under the latch and opened it. Wolf nearly fell out of his chair in shock, when his wife gasped audibly and jumped violently backwards. He scrambled up, drawing his kunai as she did the same. Hawk paused, tilting her head in confusion even as he rounded the desk. As he did, he saw what had startled her enough to break stealth. Leader was standing in the closet, facing him, his eyes wide open. But after a second, he came to the same realizations as his partner. Their target was surrounded by a bizarre and unfamiliar machine, and more importantly, he was not reacting to their presence. And as he looked at the shinobi's glassy-eyed stare, he recognized something else. His eyes, he whispered, keeping his voice quiet just in case. I know, she raised her camera and snapped a shot. The device used standard film, but was powered by a ninjutsu in her chakra, so did not require a flash regardless of the lighting, a functionality for which she was now especially thankful. Check the other room, see if he is in there, she requested. He padded hastily over to the bedroom, and slid open the door. After a few moments he placed his hands together and focused his chakra, murmuring, release. Genjutsu, triggered by the door, he noted softly, and as he returned to her side. Other than the open eyes, and upright posture, all indications are that he is asleep, she informed him, but I'm not sure what this device is. She studied the contraption for a moment longer, and then carefully resealed the closet. Hawk inclined her head to the side, towards the entrance, and Wolf nodded. We should head back, Hawk signed as they returned to the rooftops of the city proper. I agree, Wolf's fingers indicated, that was more than enough for tonight. I meant back to the Leaf Village, she shook her head as her digits explained, this information is too important to wait 2 weeks. But we haven't found what we were sent here for, he countered. And we might not, she argued, but this is real, actionable intel. Also given our other orders, it changes the mission parameters. But our cover. He frowned under his mask, if the dango sellers leave in the middle of the night, after just 1 day. If Ko or Ayameko have not already revealed our role as Leaf spies, she reminded him of his earlier complaint, we can simply claim that the mercenaries' harassment was too much for us to take and we fled. All right, he agreed, somewhat thankful that he was unable to refute her. You are sure about this? Tsunade asked flatly. We both saw it, Hawk shrugged, I verified that he was alive and not a genjutsu. But no, we did not attempt to wake him and ask, "Are you one of the paths of pain?" if that is what you are suggesting. The Hokage smirked at the Anbu Kunoiki. But the smile quickly faded as she looked back down at the photograph of the Hidden Grass Village's leader, staring outwards blindly with the Rinnegan. Well, that definitely answers some questions, the Sannin muttered. Then she continued more firmly, "Good job, you two. I'll have the rest of the pictures and data you brought back analyzed. You can take the rest of the week off, but I'll probably have a new assignment for you after that." "Thank you, Lady Hokage," the couple stated in unison, and then bowed before exiting. Sunad picked up the picture showing leader, with Pain's unique, multi-ringed, blue eyes instead of his original green orbs. She started to wonder how long the former Akatsuki frontman had been in charge of the Grass Village. Lost in thought, she was not sure how much time had passed when Shizune knocked loudly on her door for the third time. "What is it?" Sunad sighed as she asked the question. "Milady, Temari is here to see you," Shizune said, a hint of excitement in the younger medic's voice. The Hokage sat up straight in her seat and turned to face the door. "Well, what are you waiting for?" Her tone indicated both annoyance and expectation. "Send her in immediately." Shizune nodded, and a heartbeat later, the Sand Jonin walked into the room. As she sat, the Hokage sealed the room, though she was in too much of a hurry to activate all of the protections. The Sannin practically dove back into her chair, and stared at the younger blonde intently. "I wasn't expecting to be seeing you again so soon," Sunad began without offering an kind of greeting. "Gaara already had teams in the field, investigating Guki's actions," Temari offered. "When I informed him of your request, he shifted their purpose." "And," the healer prompted, "and we found information on 3 different places where a teenage girl with orange hair and a preteen boy with brown and gray hair are being held by the Shizokas," the Kazekige's sister answered. "One group is in a hidden grass safe house near both the Stone and Waterfall countries. One is in the former Akatsuki base in the Land of Forests. And the last group is in the Land of Lightning, in a farming town that is also a cloud ninja training camp." Decoys. Sunad pondered that, but which group is the real hostages? "The first one," Temari stated, but her voice was less than adamant, "or so we believe. The girl at the grass safe house was described by the Shozoku we interrogated as having gray eyes. The other 2 have blue eyes. Also, the mercenary said that the first group is being controlled by one of Guki's elite agents, though he was able to partially break free and commit suicide before we could find out who. The other 2 bases don't have that sort of leader, at least from what we can tell. It would be convenient to keep the captives close to their home countries, if he really does intend to release them before he attacks." The Hokage frowned in thought, "but it is also more risky. But if Pain really is close at hand, that would minimize the risk. In fact, with the whole grass village at his disposal, it would be safer than the Land of Forests, and almost as safe as the Land of Lightning, while also being more unexpected." The blue-eyed woman pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes, not sure what her ally and client was talking about. Sunad recognized Temari's confusion. "We also have some new intel on the hidden grass leader," the Sannin told the go-between. "I'll fill you in later, once my people have vetted it." The Sand Kunoiki nodded. "So, what do you intend to do?" Temari probed carefully. "Nothing," Sunad smirked ironically, "I swore I wouldn't. And I have to make sure that none of Nyoko's friends in the village do anything, either. In fact, I intend to talk to them about that right away, to warn them against making any foolish moves." The 19-year-old nodded sagely, but did not move despite the implied dismissal. Sunad paused as she reached for her phone, and raised an eyebrow in interest. "Was there something else?" the Hokage asked. Temari smiled bitterly, and produced a short stack of papers. "There is the matter of our fee." Shikamaru's lover managed to sound smug and embarrassed in the same sentence. "As you said, you hired the Sand for an official mission. You wanted it on the books for the confidentiality clause, right?" "So I did," Sunad grimaced, and snatched the invoice from Temari's hand. She blinked when she saw the total, and so quickly went through the individual line items. She discovered that the frighteningly large number was correct, even generous, given the effort the Sand Village had put forth. She withdrew her checkbook from her center desk drawer, and opened it to the first incomplete page. She tore out the middle check, and when she filled it out, rounded up to the next full 10,000 ryo, both as a bonus for her allies, and to make her bookkeeping easier. She handed the monetary stand-in to Temari, who studied it for a second, before deciding it was unlikely the Hokage would stiff them, especially after adding a gratuity. Both kunoichi signed the bill, and each took a copy. If there is nothing else, then. The younger woman stood, sketching a slight bow, before darting out of the room. Before the door had closed, Tsunade was already dialing. Naruto looked around the room hopefully. For reasons he did not know, the Leaf Village had had a very light caseload over the last 3 weeks. And even though he loved spending time alone with his fiancée, both training and in other forms of exercise, the Tokujo was itching for a mission. Hinata kept a tight grip on her lover's hand. She had also been looking forward to a mission when the Hokage called them, but when she arrived and saw Neji, Tenten, Ino, and Choji, she started to have an inkling about why they were summoned. And she was concerned about what her lover's reaction would be. Tsunade regarded the teens cautiously, as she activated the privacy mechanisms in her office. She steepled her fingers, considering them. Before we proceed, I'm going to have to request a blood oath from each of you. I need you to swear you won't discuss what you are about to hear with anyone outside of this room, at least until the sensitivity of the topic has passed. If you can't or won't do that, you are free to leave. Neji stood, but before he could step away from the chair, Tenten caught his arm. He looked down at her darkly, but she shook her head. He did not move for a moment, and then turned his attention to the Hokage. What penalty condition? He asked dangerously. Memory loss should be sufficient. The Sannin matched his seriousness. Neji met Tenten's eyes again, and finally returned to his seat. The 6 younger shinobi all swore the Fuinjutsu promise leader laid out for them. Okay. Tsunade exhaled in slight release. I'm sure by now you have all heard that Princess Nyoko is sick. And you have also probably heard rumors that she is not sick, but missing. Unfortunately, that is not just a rumor. Tenten smirked darkly, and Ino's eyes narrowed in rage. Neji turned to his fiancée with an expression of apologetic understanding. Hinata closed her eyes in sad contemplation. And Naruto leaped to his feet, his girlfriend still clutching his palm desperately. Nyoko is missing. Uzumaki demanded angrily. I told Shikamaru that wasn't possible. That there's no way we would just be sitting around if that was true. Nyoko Haim was kidnapped just over 2 weeks ago, the Hokage informed them, a hint of threat in her tone. 2 weeks. Naruto shouted, what the heck, Grammar Tsunade. Why haven't you done anything? Sit down, Naruto, the Sannin ordered. She did not raise her voice, but her controlled fury reached them nevertheless, and the blonde Tokujo dropped back into his seat with a stunned, almost frightened look. I have done everything I can, short of actively servanting the daimyo's orders, she informed them. Naruto started to speak again, and she held up her hand to silence him. Nyoko Haim is being held hostage by the new Reikage, Guki Namikaze, she started. Though all of the teens recognized the surname, only Naruto and Hinata were fully aware of what that name truly meant. He is using her to ensure that we do not interfere with his plans in the grass, the waterfall, and probably elsewhere. Guki has guaranteed her safety, so long as the Land of Fire remains neutral, and has sworn to return her first when he decides to attack us. The daimyo has chosen to take Guki at his word, and has ordered me not to oppose him, and not to send any leaf ninjas try to find or rescue Nyoko. But we're going to ignore that order, right? Naruto asked hopefully. No, Tsunade shook her head, but despite her denial, a smug expression crept onto her lips and into her eyes. Even if I were inclined to do such a thing, I swore a blood oath that I would not. Hinata gasped in surprise, and Neji's eyes widened. In that case, why are we here? Choji asked perceptively. I asked the Sand Ninjas to find your friend, Tsunade answered, and they came through. But now the question is what to do about it. I can't order anyone to rescue her, and even asking them would be breaking my vow. But we can volunteer, right? Ino deduced, after all, we are just having a conversation here, so if we ask to go. Sorry, no can do. Tsunade cut Yamanaka off, but her tone and expression did not match her words. Even if you ask to go rescue her of your own free will, there is no way I can authorize an official mission. So, I guess it's a good thing none of you have a history of disobeying orders or going AWOL. She pushed a manila folder across her desk subtly, and turned away. As she heard the rustling of the pages, the Hokage had one other thing to say. I'll remind you again, she reaffirmed sadly, this won't be like when you went to rescue Naruto, or to duel Orochimaru. If you decide to do something foolish, there will be no reinforcements. And if you were to get caught, I will have to declare you missing nins. She listened, proudly, as they all got up to leave without protest or denial. Before the last couple could exit, she called out to them. Neji, how is your recovery? The medic prompted before the Hyuga-jonin could leave, you were nearly killed by those two Shizokas. I am fine now, he said, grateful for her concern, though the healers want me to rest for a few more days. Good, she nodded, still looking out the window, when you are ready for duty, there might be a mission I want you to lead. If you understand me. I understand, Lady Tsunade, he said sardonically, but in that case, I really should get back to resting. Tenten closed the door, and Tsunade felt a fluttering of pain in her chest. What? She asked herself, I didn't break my word. No orders, not even a request. And nothing official. But the ache did not fade, and the Hokage realized it was not the blood oath. Fear and anxiety gripped her heart. If they do try this, she forced herself to qualify the statement for her oath, and fail. Why the heck are we wasting our time like this? Naruto demanded quietly, glancing around at the other passengers on the bus. We are establishing our cover story, Neji explained again, using simpler terms, there is a strong likelihood that our absence from the village will be noticed. So rather than attempting to hide our exit, we are just 6 friends using the hot springs resort tickets Ino won for some long overdue rest and relaxation. I won for her, Naruto pointed out. Neji nodded tersely to concede the point. One of the stores Yamanaka frequented had been having a raffle, with the grand prize being a weekend for 4 couples at a romantic spa. But the hotel was in the land of earth, which meant either passing through the land of grass or taking a substantial detour. And with the recent turmoil in the land of fire's northwestern neighbors, the raffle had proven less popular than the shop had hoped. Ino had dragged Naruto to the boutique, and had spent enough money to get 3 spins. Though she had taken the first turn herself, and won only a consolation prize, she gave her last 2 spins to her notoriously lucky friend. And as she hoped, on Naruto's first attempt, the golden ball fell into the tray. Ino had pretended to ask Temari if she and Shikamaru wanted the last 2 tickets, but the Sand Jonin claimed she could not get away. So the 6 vacationing friends had boarded the bus that would take them to the resort. The driver had proven grateful to have a half-dozen shinobi aboard, even if they were off duty. He had been worried about driving through the land of grass, even if it was a region of the country that had not been touched by the war. Naruto, Guki-san must be expecting someone to try something. Hinata tried to placate him, but a small group, on vacation, taking their time, without weapons. Even if they suspect us at first, if we follow Neji's plan, no one will believe we are up to anything after our 2nd or 3rd stop. Expanding on Ino's idea, Neji had extended their trip, planning for them to visit a famous amusement park after the onsen. And in the days following that, they would go to a museum, hike up a mountain to take in a popular view, try out a new water park, and finally stay one night at a 2nd hot spring, before returning home. Uzumaki had grumbled about wasting 7 days pretending to have fun, just to hide their purpose. And for that matter, who put Neji in charge? Naruto groused. Lady Tsunade, the elder Hyuga cousin answered simply. But it's not an official mission, the former Jinchuriki countered. Neji and I are the only ones here with the rank of Jonin, Tenten reminded Uzumaki, and Neji has had the least social contact with Nyoko, so he can remain the most objective. Even if he wasn't the Hokage's choice, he is the right one to be in charge. Will you quit complaining, knucklehead? Ino snapped quietly, this what we need to do to sell the con, and your constant whining in front of civilians isn't going to help matters. Naruto, Hinata whispered as she squeezed his hand, we're all worried about Nyoko. But if they figure out we are coming, and move her, it will cost us far more than a week's time. And if what the Hokage said is correct, they might hurt her, too. So you might as well relax and try to have some fun, if only to convince our enemies, Choji added. Naruto sighed, and dropped his head in defeat. Then a moment later he looked back up with a goofy grin. In that case, bring on the onsen, he stated. Was he just waiting for someone to force him to relax? Tenten pondered, and Ino had similar, if less polite, musings. Naruto's face was bright red, and not just from the heat. He kept his eyes firmly locked on Hinata's orbs, as did she in kind. Hinata was crouched as tightly as she could, her nose only millimeters from the water, and one arm wrapped around her magnificent bust. She had scooted as close to Naruto as she could. He knew only propriety kept her from wearing a swimsuit or wrapping herself with a towel. On the far side of the spring, Neji and Tenten were similarly positioned, focused upon one another while trying to hide from everyone else. Choji sat, unperturbed on the outside wall of the natural pool, halfway between the two uncomfortable couples. Only Ino prowled the tub openly, unabashedly, trying to get a good look at her four friends, and not caring what they saw of her. Come on, she complained, would you guys be acting like this if it wasn't a mixed-gender bath? I know we girls have all seen each other end before, and you guys probably have seen each other too. So it's only like two people who haven't seen you nude. And it's mixed bathing, you're insulting tradition, huddling and hiding like that. No one responded, other than to turn away when she approached, so she tried another tactic instead. The Byakugan can see through stuff, right? Yamanaka queried lecherously, like other people's clothes. You two have probably seen everyone here already anyway. So it's only fair you let everyone else get a peek, too. I would never abuse my dojutsu or my friend's trust like that, Neji said, offended. But Hinata's eyes ran down Naruto's partially concealed body, before meeting his gaze again with a grin she couldn't quite hide. Ha, I knew it, Ino barked a laugh, catching the youngest Kunoichi's action and expression. Hinata blushed brighter. I've only done that to Naruto, the youngest Kunoichi admitted. Was that before or after you two started dating? The female contender for Jiraiya needled her more conservative friend. Hinata did not answer, but tried to sink lower into the water. Ino, Choji's jutsu enlarged hand stretched across the spring, and yanked her back with moderate force. She thumped gently into his chest, and landed sitting beside him, leaning against him, with his arm tightly around her waist. Not everyone has the same idea of fun as you do, honey, the big man admonished his lover loudly. Then in her ear he whispered, maybe if you let them relax, they'll let you get your peeks. Don't worry, you guys, I'll keep her over here, he told the others at normal volume, so just enjoy the water. We should have gone to the individual baths, Ino complained. So we boys could get nosebleeds and try to peek, while you girls compare measurements and how soft your skin is. Akamaiki elaborated, shaking his head, this isn't some cliché manga, Ino. Some clichés have their place, she shot back. Like drinking flavored milks in a hot spring. Choji suggested, offering her a bottle. Ino sighed, and settled in closer to him, while taking a draw off the chilled beverage. As Choji predicted, after a few minutes, the others unwound somewhat, and the reluctant young women drifted around to sit next to their though Hinata still covered her B with one arm. But they still kept their eyes to themselves, while Ino ogled them from her position at her boyfriend's side. Finally Tenten stood with a sigh that was equal parts contentment and resignation. She did not bother to cover herself until she stepped out of the pool. That's enough for me, she announced, her eyes locking on Neji. I need to get out before I pass out. I'll see you back in our room. The Jonin Kunoichi's lips turned up indecently as she said that, and she slipped lithely into the dressing room. Neji tried to play it smooth, but the instant the door closed, he stood, giving Ino the view she had been seeking, but he quickly wrapped his towel around his waist. He strode across the stone floor surrounding the pool, not quite concealing the haste in his motions. He left the outdoor bath without a word to his comrades. What do you think, Choi? Should we head back before we become total prunes? Ino had been hoping to outlast Naruto and Hinata, but the heat was started to get to her, and Tenten's amorous exit and Neji's reaction had sent the lone Chunnin's mind spinning even further down that path. The big man nodded, and he finally released his Ichi girlfriend. They hurriedly left the spring, Choji concealing himself as he stood, while Ino just strutted back to the dressing room, totally nude. Hey, Choji, Naruto called out without looking, we still up for ping pong later? Sorry, but that's probably gonna have to wait till tomorrow, Akamaiki answered, not sounding apologetic at all. Okay, Uzumaki conceded. When the door closed, Hinata exhaled gratefully, and moved her arms away from her body so she could wrap her right limb around her fiancé and rest her other hand on his chest. Alone at last? Naruto asked and she nodded happily. So you have been peeking through my clothes? He prompted curiously. She smiled shyly and didn't answer. Since when, Hinata? He asked, poking one finger into her side. I know you're not that ticklish, but you know I know where your weak spots are. She giggled in spite of herself, and then sighed in mock defeat. The first time was during the first part of the Chunin exams, she admitted, but that was an accident. You were sitting right next to me, and I was using my Byakugan to get the answers. Then you shifted, and your hip moved out of the area I was trying not to see, and it distracted me and drew my attention. And before I knew it, I could see all of you. The second time was when we were looking for the Baikochu, she continued, on a roll. You saw me practicing in the waterfall, and I told myself it was only fair. So on our second night, while you were sleeping, I turned on my Byakugan, and looked at you. He frowned at her in surprise, and asked, was that all? No, she looked chagrined. When we started to train together, I looked a few times. I just couldn't help myself, being so close to you, and not knowing when or if you might return my feelings. And people call me a pervert. He shook his head. I'm sorry, Naruto. I shouldn't. He cut her off with a firm K. Did I say I minded? He counted happily. Then his mouth turned down again, and he added, so long as it's only me. It's only you, she told him, it has always been you. She panted slightly at the end of the statement. Are you gonna be okay? He asked, noticing a difference in the flush of her cheeks, as well as the elegant beads of sweat on her brow and ears. I'm fine, she murmured, nuzzling his neck. Then she shifted her legs so instead of sitting beside him in the basin, she was nearly straddling him. Hinata, you know it's bad manners to do that in the hot spring, he admonished her weakly. Even if we don't do that, she mimicked him, it doesn't mean we can't make out a little. What if someone else comes in? He asked pointedly. She paused, and the rest of the face turned as red as her cheeks. She pulled away slightly, disappointment replacing the bashfulness in her expressive white eyes. Maybe we should continue this debate in our room, he suggested roguishly. The next instant, water splashed on his face, as it flooded into the Hinata-shaped hole around him. He turned, and only briefly saw her shapely behind, before she disappeared into the dressing room. Grinning broadly, he hopped out of the spring and hurried after her. Naruto intertwined his fingers with Hinata's and gently dragged her arm over her head. She resisted at first, but he smiled at her reassuringly. Finally, she let him maneuver her left limb out of her comfort zone. Instead, she gripped his hand tightly, the rest of her body shaking in anticipation. Here we go, he told her. 3, 2, 1. Yee. Hinata screamed as they passed the point of no return. Woo. Naruto joined his lover as they plummeted towards the earth with ever-increasing speed. Then the track suddenly shifted direction, and it felt like their stomachs plunged into their knees as the cars raced upwards. Behind them, Ino whooped ecstatically, and after she caught her breath, the Hyuga heiress joined in. As they crested the first hill, they were briefly lifted off their seats, and Uzumaki shouted in joy again. That was incredible, Naruto panted, the hills and that corkscrew thing. It's called a barrel roll, Choji noted. Naruto frowned briefly in confusion, but the new term could not keep the smile from his face. Okay, whatever, the blonde man agreed, but it was amazing. I never got what was so special about these things, but man. Beside him, Hinata just nodded, still catching her breath. Ino started to ask if he had really never been on a roller coaster before, but then she remembered a certain uncomfortable conversation at a beachside resort, and also that there was only one of these sorts of amusement parks in the Land of Fire. I guess it goes without saying that he never came to a place like this when he was a kid, the mentalist Kunoiki thought to herself, and since he became a ninja, he probably never really had the time or the inclination. You didn't like it, Neji? Naruto demanded of his taciturn friend. The elder Hyuga cousin was normally pale, but now his complexion looked decidedly green. I don't see the thrill in spending 4 minutes pretending to fall to my death over and over, the Jonin stated carefully, as if trying to retain his hold on his breakfast. Then why didn't you wait out here? Ino asked dubiously. Because Tenten loves roller coasters, Neji responded simply, and if I had stayed behind, there would have been an odd number in our group. I'll tell you what, Choji offered, next time, you and I can both sit out, and Ino and Tenten can ride together. You didn't like it either, Choji. Uzumaki was incredulous. Oh, I like coasters well enough, the big Tokujo rumbled, though not as much as you guys seem to. But some of these rides have pretty small cars, so it can be a tight fit for me. So I can keep Neji company, while you four ride. Why not just use a jutsu to shrink yourself down temporarily? Naruto suggested, and everyone else glared at him. No jutsu, Neji hissed. We are just a group of normal friends, having fun, Tenten reminded him. Besides, then I'd miss out on all the food. Choji smiled blissfully in anticipation, and Ino grimaced slightly. You know, there are other rides Neji likes. Tenten changed the subject for Yamanaka, maybe we can hit some of them next. Sure. Naruto grinned, I'm up for anything. So just what kind of other rides are? As the others started discussing various attractions of the park, Ino caught Hinata's arm. The youngest woman looked at her friend curiously, and Ino offered her a sad smile, and inclined her head forward. Maybe when all this is done, the meddlesome blonde noted vaguely, you should take him on a real vacation, to do all the other things that he missed out on growing up. Things that both of you might have missed out on. Hinata nodded thoughtfully, and after a minute she chuckled sadly. Maybe, if we have any vacation time left, after all we've spent on personal missions, the pale beauty countered ironically. Ino snorted in agreement, and then appeared to think of something. You could always blackmail the Hokage. Ino, Hinata gasped, scandalized by the suggestion. Hey, hurry up you two, Naruto called back to them, we're going to ride the River Rapids boat thing next. River Rapids boat thing. Ino mouthed to her friend, and Hinata grinned. The blonde caught her younger friend's hand, and pulled her forward. You guys just want to see us in wet t-shirts, she pretended to scold them. After the last 2 days, you are hardly in a position to make accusations, Ino, Neji said flatly, and both Hinata and Tenten turned bright red. I don't get it. Naruto leaned back to get a wider view, his eyes narrowing. Why would someone have a hammer that big in one hand and a long bow in the other? Both take 2 hands, he couldn't use either one. He could be using the hammer as an arrow. Choji suggested dubiously. It's just a statue, Naruto, Hinata offered uncertainly. The Earth Daimyo who commissioned it probably never held a weapon in his life, and just thought it looked powerful or something, Ino remarked turning away from the ancient bronze monument in disdain. I guess I just don't understand art, Uzumaki shrugged. That is hardly a surprise, Neji agreed sarcastically. Naruto stuck his tongue out at the older man, and Hinata and Tenten shared grins. Naruto slid into the spring, his swim trunks briefly catching on the stone lip. Hinata sat down next to him, wearing her two-tone blue one-piece. Uzumaki missed his fiancée's purple and gray bikini, but she had not purchased another suit after the last one had been damaged and she had discarded it in a fit of rage. Ah, the former Jinchuriki sighed, that was fun and all, but after 4 days of running around, it's nice to have a good soak. Oh yeah, Choji agreed. But why does this place make us wear swimsuits, while the other onsen made us go in en like normal? Naruto asked, his eyes suddenly coming back into focus. I'd rather know why I couldn't untie my top on the lazy river ride, Ino said, referencing the water park they had visited the previous day. She shifted her suit's strings to check her tan lines. We were just floating around in circles. The first resort was trying to be an authentic land of fire, hot spring, Tenten answered Naruto, ignoring Ino, that's why we had to sign those waivers. Onsen etiquette might seem like common sense to us, but people in the land of Earth aren't as familiar with it. That's why this place makes us wear swimsuits. It is easier for the hotel, and attracts a more casual clientele. That's why it's cheaper, too. It's all about business. Like why someone might hire ninjas from a closer, but weaker village, instead of going to one of the major villages. Naruto grinned proudly as he spouted the analogy. Yes, Neji confirmed with a hint of amazement, that is a good comparison. Don't be that shocked, Uzumaki said smugly, Shizune-san has had me studying some of the business stuff the Hokage has to deal with. Some of it is strange, but the basics make sense. You might make a decent Hokage after all, Tenten teased him. Choji nodded sagely. Yeah, keep it up. Naruto pretended to be annoyed, when I'm in charge, you're all getting D-rank missions and the most loud-mouthed genin squads I can find. A squad of Narutos. Ino gasped in mock horror. You just lost my vote, Neji said simply. After a few moments' playful glowering, they all lapsed into warm, gentle laughter. See, Naruto, Hinata whispered to him, this trip wasn't so bad. Not bad at all, he agreed, squeezing her lightly, but the best is still to come. Well? Ino asked impatiently. They had all gathered in Neji and Tenten's room, and the two Byakugan users were scanning the area for observers, both human and technological. Hinata shook her head, and both cousins released the dojutsu. From what we can tell, no one has been following us since yesterday, Neji announced softly. It seems like they were finally convinced when we went to the water park. So it looks like the plan worked, Tenten smiled grimly, aiming that statement primarily at Naruto. The blonde youth shrugged in defeat. I take it this means our vacation is over. Choji noted, thinking of Neji's contingency strategies. The other teens all grew more serious. I guess that means we're heading home, Naruto contemplated, with just one more stop to make on the way. That will be all for this video. Be sure to like, subscribe, share, and comment down below for more videos. Goodbye.